The mayor of the Canadian capital of Ottawa has declared a state of emergency to deal with truckers' days-long demonstrations in the city. Jim Watson says protesters camped out in the capital far outnumber the police and control the situation. He says it's the protesters that are, quote, calling the shots now. He made the comment as a demonstration against coronavirus vaccine mandates has clogged parts of the city for a 10th day. Similar protests have been held in other cities, namely Toronto and Quebec City. A movement called Freedom Convoy began on January the 22nd against the Canadian vaccine requirement for cross-border truckers, but it quickly morphed into protests against COVID restrictions and the government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Organizers now say they're expecting their numbers to swell into tens of thousands. Let's try and understand the situation better with the help of course, I believe at this point, out of Niagara Falls, Mr. Jason Unruhe can join us if he can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason, for being with us. I'd like to ask you this question. Of course, there are protests going on against the vaccine, in different places in the world, but you don't hear very often that they turn into a mayor of a city declaring state of emergency, or they going on for 10 days. It just brings to mind the question that perhaps it's not only about COVID, perhaps there are more fundamental things together with COVID that has led to the situation. Isn't that right, Jason?
Well, that's certainly the case. The way this was set up originally was that it was supposed to be against vaccines. But this turned into very much an anti-Trudeau protest. It's being heavily funded by unknown sources. Actually, it was GoFundMe that recently stopped allowing people to donate money to their cause because of violence that had been carried out, because of suspicious origins of money. Elon Musk has thrown his support behind the protests and, in my opinion, has probably sent money. The Conservative Party of Canada has mobilized people and funds for this movement to simply attack the Liberal Party, which is rather nonsensical given that vaccine mandates are dictated by the provinces, not by the federal government. Now, this movement is very clearly an alt-right, very MAGA-oriented, very QAnon-oriented conspiracy theories, also very racist. All three main leaders, particularly Patrick King, have gone on record as saying horribly racist things, including accusing First Nations people of essentially being degenerate. They have accused Patrick King specifically accused the former Iranian president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad for a kind of white supremacist great replacement theory. There have been numerous attacks. There has been one particular incident where a soup kitchen in Ottawa was raided by some of these protesters who hurled racist abuse at a security guard, demanded to be fed by a soup kitchen, food that is reserved specifically for homeless people who don't have any food to eat. There's been numerous complaints of the trucks blaring their horns all day, all night for 5 days straight. There have been altercations between residents and neighborhoods going out and getting into screaming matches with these protesters because essentially they can't sleep. They're disturbing people from being able to live their normal everyday lives. But this has taken on a very clear far right-wing agenda, one that is incredibly racist. It's very anti-immigration. Like I said, there have been numerous public statements that are frighteningly racist coming out of the protesters and the leaders of the movement themselves. Their blatant disregard for public health, which is a problem that affects everybody. So I think that this may have been started by perhaps 2 or 3 people who were anti-vax, pushing some kind of vaccine conspiracy theory, and it gained popular support from very far-right figures, many racists, white supremacists, etc., and feeling emboldened by the public displays that they've managed to get away with, they've managed to come together and be an even larger force.
Jason, of course, the protesters, you know, everybody's prediction is that it's going to swell within the next few days, and the situation obviously going to get worse, you know, with the mayor saying that it's the truckers, it's the demonstrators who are calling the shots right now. The question really is, how big of a demonstration are we expecting in the next few days, perhaps if it is going to continue, and how bad do you think the situation on top of that is going to be for both the local government and the government of Justin Trudeau?
Well, see, the thing is with a lot of Canadian protests, they can be very unpredictable. Most protests in Canada are not particularly very big, they're not particularly aggressive or violent, but there is the odd case where they can spiral out of control very quickly. And I think that there's a very large potential for that here in this situation. As the truckers continue to disturb other people's lives, as they continue to block roadways, as they continue to block emergency services vehicles, there's an increasing probability that someone is going to lose their temper. And that's all it takes, is for one person to be fed up with what's going on, and it can very easily spiral out of control into larger acts of violence. Now, normally that's not a very common thing in Canada, but with this kind of movement going on, with people who are full of hate pushing these protests, then I think obviously there's a very high link between hatred and violence. So I think that there's a very good chance this is going to get bigger, and I think there's a very big risk that this could turn into something massively violent.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Mr. Jason Unruhe, political commentator out of Niagara Falls in Ontario. Thanks for your time.